Hello, hello. How are we doing today, everybody? We are live here in the Action Lab. My name is Chris. This is Scott. We are hitting you here on a Sunday night. We are live on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube, multi-streaming on all three platforms. So thank you guys all for tuning in and checking us out here on your Sunday night. I know there's a lot of things you could be doing, relaxing, getting ready for the week, but we are here with you to get you through. Scotty, it's Sunday. How was the weekend?
Weekend was all right. Look at Mayday already jumping in the chat, getting ahead of things. Takeaways from the Phillies series: Hoskins and Harper back. Bullpen is back, to not in a good way, but Bryce and Rose are back. Yeah. Who did I didn't even see who the Phillies play this weekend. I missed that.
I missed it too. I don't know if the background color you have or the apparel you're wearing or the hat or anything maybe gives the answer away of who the Phillies are playing.
Oh, that is right. They're playing the Rockies this weekend.
Yeah.
So with Harper and Hoskins back, they must have swept. I assume. I can only assume they swept the Rockies.
takeaway from the Phillies Mayday series. Hoskins and Harper back in the bullpen. The bullpen is back to not in a good way. But Bryce and Riz are back. Boom.
I will say Mayday. Harper absolutely crushed a couple balls today. Got me thinking. I hope he plays well, and I hope he's back for the All-Star game and playing in a little home run derby, because especially that second one, he absolutely crushed that ball. So it'd be fun to watch him taking balls out and hopefully get into our third deck, which is called the rooftop up here. If he is able to make it there and maybe participate in the home run derby or something like that. But tough series Mayday. First couple games back and forth were tight games. Today, not so much. Two solo shots from Harper got the Phillies up 2-0, and then 12 straight from the Rockies, including a grand slam from Trevor Story that broke the game open from a 3-2 game to a 7-2 game and kind of put it to bed.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into the week of the Rockies here. We'll touch on today's game. Today was a great game, though. As far as everything goes from that standpoint, it was a great way to finish out the weekend on a positive note. So feels really good there. Mayday, by the way, hasn't really been a great week for Philadelphia sports for you. So as far as that goes, let us know, just if you need to vent, man. We're here to vent. We love you. We know, it's been a tough week. So, hey, we'll make sure that you have this platform to get it all off your chest. He can reach it, definitely cards. Then Melt's next two series.
I'm guessing that's the Mets. And yeah, go ahead and strike out Nolan Arenado every time he's up to bat, if you could, in this card series. That'd be great. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that would be perfect for us. So, just to get you guys up to speed here, if you don't already know, we have been doing a series of all of the draft prospects leading up to the NFL draft. We are chipping away at building all the behind the scenes for our draft special, and it is coming together very nicely. I got some different sound effects going. We got some different scrollers going. We got some fun things planned. We're going to make it a spectacle. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have some highlight reels. It's going to be great. But before then, we wanted to make sure that all of you knew who was who at each position so that you can stick with us in that first round. You can make sure, hey, I know who are the top prospects at each position. You can make sure that these aren't unfamiliar names at that point. So far, we've covered a lot of the big positions. We've covered quarterback. We've covered corners. We've covered edge rushers and wide receivers. We've done a little bit of everything, but we are currently going to be tonight covering the linebackers and the running backs. So we want to make sure you guys are up to speed there as well. But as far as this goes, 7-1 Dodgers game is over. So, we'll need to update our scroll bar here.
Yeah, that's been a fun series. A couple series already. He's talking Dodgers, Padres. Is that been a fun series? I don't know if that one's. I don't think it's final, but maybe it is. Actually, it probably is at this point because it was an afternoon game, so I'm sure it's final. And Dodgers took care of business.
Yeah. Keep in mind our scroll bar is only up to date. I just updated that score, but it's only up to date with what we have here. It's not as super interactive. We're playing around with trying to get that going, but if we can pull in some of that data and figure out a way to do that, we're going to try to do that for you guys, so that way we can have that scoreboard up there always constantly updating on its own. But that's a work in progress. We're going to get there soon enough. Micah Parsons, yeah, you're already getting ahead of us. Yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about him tonight as well. He's going to be on our list. But anything else you want to touch on as far as the weekend sports since Wednesday, Scotty, before we jump into the the whole NFL side of things and touch on some of these players?
I mean, there was something that happened in the NFL this week outside of the draft that, involved some picks in the draft, but big for my Chiefs. Big trade went down a couple days ago. I think went down on Friday. The Chiefs' biggest hole on their team at this point was left tackle, and having to cut Eric Fisher, their longtime left tackle, after he ruptured his Achilles in the AFC Championship game and just wasn't going to be healthy. So they were able to trade for Orlando Brown Jr., the tackle from Baltimore. He's played 3 years in Baltimore. First 2 at right tackle, last year at left tackle after injury to Ronnie Stanley put him there, and made the Pro Bowl the last 2 years. Last year at left tackle, and that's the reason that he had to be dealt. He basically said he would not go back to being a right tackle. He promised his late deceased father that he was going to be a left tackle for the rest of his career, and now he got traded. I am shocked that the Ravens traded a player of his caliber to the Chiefs, like their single biggest preventer of making a run probably and being a Super Bowl contender, and you traded him to the best team in the AFC. So that to me is mind-blowing. The Chiefs must have had a much better offer than anyone else did, but this is a guy that 700 snaps at left tackle last year, didn't give up a sack or even a quarterback hit on Lamar Jackson. So this dude is legit. He's really, really good. He's enormous. He's like 6'5", like 350, like 360. He's a giant human being. Just a wall of a man that'll play left tackle for the Chiefs. And so the Chiefs, the only downside is me as a lover of the draft. Chiefs did trade away their first round pick, so they will be absent on our Thursday night coverage from picking it all, unless they do something crazy and trade up, which I don't foresee happening at all. So ended up being, they gave up their first, third, and a fourth this year for a second this year, and then they were swapping like a fifth and a sixth next year, which is kind of like whatever. But overall, it kind of levels out to basically, if you look at like the different ones with points on like a trade, and there's all these levels of trades and points and assigning it, it's basically like a either high to mid second round pick that they gave up for a guy that was going to be better than any tackle they could have taken at 31. So I'm hyped about it. I can't believe it happened. I would have loved it, but I'm like, the Ravens are never going to trade him to the Chiefs. Like, they're just not going to do that. That'd be stupid. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah, I mean, you know what you're getting there, right? So, hey, big ups for the Chiefs to make a big move there, and it was a need that they needed to fill. Their line was, it definitely had some holes. So that's a big pickup there from another AFC contender that could have probably been in that top echelon of teams that challenge them in the AFC. Mayday, hit that follow button. Yeah, he's telling all of you guys, if you guys are here, hit those follow buttons. Thank you, Mayday, for reminding people, making sure that everyone is here and making sure that they're following. So whether you're on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, hit that follow button on the Facebook side of things. If you're here on the Twitch side of things, easy. It's free. All of this is free. Just hit that follow button. We love each and every one of you who do, but we also want your participation and jump in and have some conversations with us too. Throw in your different takes on whatever sport you want. UFC. Anyone on the UFC? By the way, I did not order the card, but I saw some of the highlights from UFC this weekend. Man, what a weekend for UFC. That card was incredible. There was a couple knockouts that just were insane. And fantastic. Did you happen to see some of those, Scotty?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the two things that stuck out from the whole night were the just horrific broken leg. I don't know if you saw that highlight from.
Oh, there was three or four highlights. Yeah,
Chris Weidman, a guy who this had happened alternate to him, but he went for a leg kick and his leg just snapped in half when he kicked the other guy, and. Like it looks, when you look at it, like he didn't even notice, and then he tried to put plant his leg back down on the mat, and it just buckled and he went down. Like it was flailing out there loose. Pretty gruesome. Ironically, earlier in his career, years ago, that happened in another fight of his, except it happened to, and I forget the guy he was fighting in that fight. It happened to the guy he was fighting against, went for a leg kick on him, and his leg snapped the exact same way. So, pretty gruesome to watch, pretty ugly. It literally stuck out. No, yeah. The crazy thing about it is you look at that and you're like, oh, dude, that guy's never going to fight again. According to my Twitter doc, who's pretty reliable, like it looks bad, it is bad, but he's going to recover in like 6 to 9 months. Which isn't that bad when all is said and done, based off of how it looked. I mean, that bottom half of his leg was just flailing like a limp noodle out there.
It's not for the faint of heart. It's definitely, if you're squeamish, don't go check it out. It's all over the internet. You can find it anywhere. But when he makes contact with the leg, you see it just wrap around the other guy's leg. It kind of bends around and wraps it, and you just see it's broken. And then it's kind of, when I first saw this, it was kind of interesting because I was like, he's going to plant that back leg. It's happened in slow motion, even though the replay was in real time. But I saw it in slow motion. I was like, he's going to put his weight on that. He's going to put his weight on that. Oh, no. And you see his leg just give out. And it's just, ooh, it gives you chills a little bit. I think there was another broken leg that night as well in another one of the fights. And then you had a big knockout in the women's side of things. And then you had Usman with a big knockout. That one, that main event, it was funny because Usman's opponent was just kind of toying around, laughing like 30 seconds before he got knocked out.
I think it was 12. I think it was 12 seconds. I think I saw a clip. It was 12 seconds before he got knocked the fuck out.
Yeah, and he got just roasted he got caught. His head just whipped. I mean, the whiplash from that punch was just nasty. It was a crazy card. I wish, Scotty, maybe you and I got to get one of these cards coming up. You and I, we could split order it and just have a little watch party one of these days, because I haven't really, I've been watching some of the different fights, because there's been fights with the boxing, with the garbage boxing fights with all these, the Logan Paul and the Paul brothers and this and that. And there's been, it's been all just garbage fights. But then all of a sudden we have this, I haven't really been keeping up with a lot of the UFC. I've just been watching a pay-per-view here, pay-per-view there, but I've not really been consistent with it. But maybe next one we go in on and we just split it and we just check it out, get the families together and watch some fights. I know Rachel and Lauren would love that.
There's nothing. Rachel keeps asking me, when can we order more UFC fights? No, she would hard pass on that. No, Mayday in the chat. Yeah, you're right. It was Anderson Silva years ago against in like 20. I think it was like 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, that he broke his leg doing the same thing against Chris. So, pretty wild, pretty gruesome to watch, but. There's like 3 types of people in the world, right? You're like one that won't watch that clip at all because you're like, I don't want to see that. Or you're one that I need to see it once, but I don't, after once, I'm good. Or you watch it 100 times because you're like, I got to watch that again. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It depends on that. That one I watched a few times because I needed to see some different angles. The Alex Smith one, I only watched once. That one to me was more... That one was just turned inside out. It's gross.
And then Joe Rogan was trending all over Twitter too with some of his reactions to some of these knockouts and some of the things that were going on. So, there was a lot of things to pull from this. Normally, there's only maybe 1 or 2 storylines from, a pay-per-view. I feel like this one had so many storylines, between the different knockouts that we saw, the broken legs, all of it was just... It was a really good pay-per-view across the board. So,
and not to mention, we didn't talk about Full Capacity. This was in Florida, and it was the first in the U.S. full capacity UFC fight night that they've had since this whole pandemic nonsense started. So, we're getting back to real life. Feels good.
Yeah. No, I definitely. I went to an event over the weekend. It was like this event downtown, and they had a pretty big, venue that it felt like I was getting back into the swing of things. Again, the opening day event, even at the Rockies, it felt like it was back to normal for the most part, even though it was limited capacity. The way you guys spread people out, it felt like it was more full. So, yeah, I think it was, it's getting better and better. DC almost came out of retirement to kick the shit out of Jake Paul. By the way, wasn't Jake Paul, I saw this on Twitter, and maybe all of a sudden it disappeared, so I don't think there was a lot of validity behind there, but wasn't Jake Paul scheduled to fight on June 5th against Mayweather. I saw some things trending, and then all of a sudden it went silent like a day later. Like it was, I think Bleacher Report was kind of like, this could be a thing. So there were some big outlets that were saying some things, and I was like, I don't know. Like it's not like a for sure thing. And then all of a sudden it went radio silent, and I haven't heard anything for like 3 or 4 days. Was that a thing? I don't know. I don't know how close they were potentially, but
I'm pretty sure it's happening. I'm pretty sure it's Logan Paul. You said Jake, but Logan Paul and
Logan. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's happening. June 5th. I think you're right. Like it's going down.
Logan Paul Mayweather.
Which is wild. Like he's gonna get. Well, like he's had a few fights against for the last one was against the first time it was an actual like fighter, and it was a dude who was way out of shape. Like as Mayday said, like Daniel Cormier was like he would knock him out in his own right. Like I don't know, Logan. Now I'm getting on Jake. Logan Paul is getting a little ahead of himself. Wins a few fights, and he thinks he's God's gift to boxing all of a sudden. I hope Floyd at times obviously is just more like a technical boxer who just wins by, just out hitting him, but doesn't necessarily knock him out, especially recently. I hope Mayweather just knocks Logan Paul the fuck out.
Yeah. And the thing too here is there's some discrepancies with size and reach and everything and age in this one. So it's going to be interesting to see how this ends up panning out, because obviously Mayweather's more veteran. He's a seasoned fighter. He knows how to counter some of those, mismatches when it comes to, all of these different aspects of the fight. The reach, he's very quick on his feet. He's very good at dodging and moving around the ring and being, very strategic. So I think that's going to be super interesting to check out when we get closer and closer. But I don't know.
Current odds on that fight are like Mayweather's minus 2,400. So he's basically, you got to spend $24 to win $1. But then it's weird because Logan Paul's only plus 900. It says here, so you get paid out 9 to 1 on that. So those odds both ways are kind of crappy. A little strange, but Logan Paul's a heavy underdog there, as he should be. Yeah.
So interesting to think about that's going to be coming up here very soon. That's going to be a big pay-per-view. That's going to be the first boxer. And again, it's going to be weird to see how the storylines are going to come out of that, regardless of who wins. Like, are there excuses one way or another? Oh, Paul wins and he ends up, everyone says, oh, well, you were fighting someone that's, double your age, or, you had a bigger advantage, this and that. There's going to be all these different storylines that come out of it, but it'll be interesting to see. Mayweather definitely knows how to put on a show, and he knows how to promote. He's done it. He's been there. He's fought some of the biggest fighters in boxing in his career. So they're going to get that rolling. I think that one will be interesting.
I think we should move on, but real quick, did you hear Jake Paul, Logan's brother, basically said Logan's fucked? He went out and he basically he's just like,
surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. But as you mentioned, let's dive in and make sure that we're hitting some of these other segments we want to get to before the end of the night here. So let's talk some NFL draft here. We have a lot to go over. Now we're going to be going in and touching on the top 5 at each position, and we've been doing that for the last week and a half. So we're going to continue this trend going forward and making sure that, some of these guys may go in the first, second round, third round, depending on, where they end up slotting out. There's a lot of picks coming up here in the first couple rounds. So we're going to kind of give you an idea of where we think these guys will kind of slot in, whether that's early, late, second, third round, what their intangibles are, what they're going to be bringing to a team that may draft them. So let's dive in here. We're talking running backs. And as far as this goes, let's start with Trey Sermon, Ohio State.
Yeah, Trey Sermon's a big running back. So out of Ohio State, 6'1", 215, pretty good size. He's a big powerful. He's a north-south guy. So more so than any of these other backs on our list, he's going to be more a north-south runner. Just hits that gap in that hole and takes it upfield and can, get a few yards running into the guy in front of him, or as we see here, maybe hurdling the guy, as he did to that poor Northwestern corner right there. But he's difficult to bring down. He's best between the tackles. He's not really like an outside the tackles or a guy who, has the agility to cut, and go lateral really quickly. And his vision's a little inconsistent, but he's comfortable catching passes. Only caught 8 balls though last year for 34 yards, but didn't have any bad performances with that. Certainly had his best game against Northwestern, 331 yards against Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game, and then 193 yards against Clemson. So played great on the biggest stages. Didn't exactly, maybe not in the national championship game against Alabama, but no one did a lot for Ohio State in that game on both sides of the ball. So he's not someone that you're going to look at and just be like, he's going to, change the dynamic of your run game. I don't think this running back class in general is that strong. And there's a separation between the top 4, and this guy for sure. But he can pass protect. He needs to work on that, on his, skill set and consistency, but certainly puts the effort out and the ability to do it. So he can help in that regard. And if he can catch the ball a little more and be a north-south guy, he can be a consistent guy for a team. Just not anyone that's going to, dominate for you or change the dynamic of your run game. He's just going to be a piece to the puzzle in your run game. My player comp for him is actually Alexander Madison, the backup in Minnesota, who gets a lot of time because Dalvin Cook gets hurt from time to time. And nothing wrong with that. That's a big, powerful back that can get the job done when he's provided good blocking, but not a game breaker, not elite speed, nothing like that.
Yeah, Sermon played at Oklahoma for 2017 through 2019 before transferring to Ohio State for his senior year. Best season came as a sophomore, but as a junior, Sooners turned to more of a Kennedy Brooks and Jalen Hurts to lead their rushing attack at that point. So, he has some talent to go with, some good size. He had a shot at being at a good amount of carries when he for the Buckeyes, and they looked when they kind of were looking to him to produce there. So yeah, split carries with Master Teague a lot of games in 2020. But Sermon came through with a monster game against Northwestern to lead Ohio State, to a tough win when the passing attack was kind of struggling and sputtering at that point. Finished 2020 well, running hard, showing some power, but yards after contact, he's he's okay. He can get you there, but yeah, as far as this goes, 6 foot, 221, projected 40 time is 4.58. So, as far as the 2021 draft, I've seen him projected in like the 3rd to 4th round here, is kind of a range, but who knows where he's going to end up getting slotted in once the draft kicks off. There's a few guys ahead of him. I've seen him as low as 6th or 7th on some running back draft boards, and I've seen him as high as 4th, maybe. I think I saw one with 3rd. I think that's a little high. So, but yeah, he's going to be in that lower tier of this top 5, top 6 running backs in this draft. Next up on this list, we have Michael Carter coming in at number 4 for our top 5 running back list.
Yeah, Michael Carter apparently went to running back U, because the next 2 guys on our list are going to be running backs out of North Carolina that both played there. And I'm actually, as player comps for him, I'm going to compare him to 2 guys that had played the last couple years together. Won't be together this year, but I'll get to that in a second. Carter's a shifty guy. Carter's your shifty back from there. Not necessarily a power guy at all, but big play potential in the run and pass game. Laterally can really, change direction quickly and make defenders miss in space. So, especially at the second level, he's not going to overpower you. He's not going to, do anything like that. But he has the ability to, in space, really make a guy, players miss. I think he averaged close to 8 yards a carry last year at North Carolina. I think it was like 7.9. So, pretty dominant in the run game, although he wasn't their main back. The guy in front of him was. But this is a game-breaking guy. Can catch the ball out of the backfield, capable hands. And he actually was the best route runner, they said, at the senior. He went to the Senior Bowl. It was the best running back as far as route running ability there, according to most scouts, as he was asked to run quite a few different routes. He's a little tentative in the hole. His biggest weakness is he dances a little too much. He knows how shifty he is, and sometimes instead of just hitting that hole, he tries to dance a little and gets caught up in the traffic and doesn't hit the hole hard enough. And just like most of these guys, he struggles in pass protection still. But he also just doesn't run through contact. He shies away. He's not going to be the guy that's going to plow into somebody and pick you 2 more yards up. He just gets brought down pretty easily, but shifty, very, very shifty, capable in open space, second level, and good hands.
Yeah, so some of the highlights I've seen, he just makes defenders look silly at times. He's very bouncy. He's like very athletic, and he can make a lot of people miss. He may not have elite speed, but he has the agility to make you just can't stop watching. Like you just get sucked in, and you're just like, wow, this guy's pretty dynamic. From agility standpoint, 3.98 second agility time paired with 6.81 second 3-cone drill, placing him at 98th and 98th and 90th percentile among running backs historically at those two. So he has some of those intangibles in those different areas. He's definitely, again, speed is kind of his knockoff. He's not going to just burn you down the field. He's more shifty than anything else, as you mentioned. As far as since 2018, Carter ranks second only to his teammate Williams in the FBS in percentage of runs, picking up a 10-plus yard gain at 21% per clip. So he's very, very just you can't get your hands on him, which is good. A lot of times, he can definitely make people miss and get those yards downfield. So as far as the Tar Heels backfield, we're going to get into this a little further. They are kind of stacked back there. For the NFL, he could be undersized rotational back who maybe contributes as a little bit of a receiver. So he has some flexibility there. But yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at here with Carter on this list. Number 3 on our list, teammate Javonte Williams, coming in at number 3.
Yeah, Javonte Williams is a very different runner and type back than Michael Carter. This is more of your well-built, physical, large back. I think separated by 20 pounds. I think, Williams comes in at 220. I think Carter was closer to around 200. But he's explosive for a 220 back. Like, he's not just I'm going to hit the hole and gain, power through some and gain some extra yards. He's got good vision, really patient behind his blocking and really good vision. Like I just said, so he's a north-south guy, but with patience and develops it. He's not someone with game-breaking speed or anything like that at 220, obviously, but he's decent in the passing game. Put up a few touchdowns, 300 yards, 25 catches last year at North Carolina. But he ended his career at North Carolina averaging 6.3 yards per carry throughout his career, which was 8th in ACC history for a running back as far as career average goes. So a guy that was very, very productive, can be a 3-down back, a bell cow. Someone that I think's a sleeper and like a lot. I know we have him ranked 3, and I think most people have him at 3 behind these top 2. But here's a guy I think will probably go second round and certainly in day 1 and be a really, really solid, great starter, depending on the fit and the team he's with. I didn't do the player comp before with his teammate Carter, but so they remind me of, I think Javonte Williams is like a Joe Mixon for the Bengals. Just a 3-down power back that's shifty, but then can do it all kind of type. And Carter was a Gio Bernard, who now has signed this offseason with the Tampa Bay Bucks, but has played his career with the Bengals prior to this. So those are the kind of 2 type of backs that I look at them as where they were at North Carolina and where they will fit in the NFL. So I like Javonte quite a bit more than Michael Carter, in my opinion. Mayday said he sounds like a McCoy. I think he was talking about Carter, and I don't think Carter has that type of shifty. Like McCoy was a different level of shifty, especially in his heyday, an ability to make guys miss and being fluid. So Javonte Williams, really, really solid guy. Could end up being, it wouldn't shock me if he put up the best stats of any running back in this draft in year one. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
5'10", 220. You know, as far as the projected round, it's going to be end of the first, maybe into the second, depending on who's going to be available and who's needing to fill that gap there. But yeah, he's got some really solid pieces to his game that make him very attractive. He put up crazy broken tackle numbers in 2020 that helped him skyrocket up these boards. I mean, breaking 76 tackles on 157 runs, or 48%. You know, it's crazy. He earned 95.9% rushing grade for this past season, over 2 grading points higher than the previous best that's been recorded since the inception from Pro Football Focus in 2014. So he's crazy. He's going to be breaking tackles for you, moving the ball down the field. Some other just intangibles that I like about this kid is he graduated with a 4.6 GPA and was valedictorian in his class in high school. So he played linebacker until his senior year of high school. And now 20 years old. He's born in April of 2000, so he's a young kid. But, you know, some of those things kind of stand out to me. You don't see a lot of those smarts from maybe some of these other guys that just really take their schooling seriously too. They can learn, they can be like sponges and just absorb information. So, you know, wherever he goes, he's going to be a student of the game, and he's going to just continue to get better and better, which is, you know, some of those intangibles you don't, again, see very often in the stats on the field. But man, guys who can get it done on and off the field, it makes you feel a little bit more comfortable in drafting a guy that has his shit together, not just, you know, in life as well. So, you know, I think that's a big piece of it too. He shed tackles left and right. He did catch some passes here and there as well. So I think he's going to be a very solid player for whoever ends up drafting him, and you're going to be getting a nice, solid player. I agree with you. I think he could be one of the top running backs in this class. Even though we have him third, it wouldn't surprise me either if he ends up being one of the better prospects here. Number 2. Now, this is an interesting one, too, because a lot of people, you see him on the top of some boards as well. But Travis Etienne. I always mess up the names.
I think it's Etienne.
Etienne. So, and I know Mayday is a big Clemson guy. So, you know, you can chime in and let us know what your thoughts are here. But what do you got, Scotty, for Travis, number 2?
This is by far and away the best game breaker. This guy has elite burst, elite speed. He just looks different when he gets the ball in his hands. Like, you can see the burst. If he gets into space, like, look out, like, this guy's going to take it to the house in space. Like, no one's catching up to this guy. Crazy fast, crazy quick, and plays like it on the field. It's not just a 40 time. I don't even know what his 40 time was, honestly.
It was 4.46, I believe.
And that's way slower than he looks on tape, honestly. He looks so fast on tape. And statistically, he was dominant in college. He has the record in ACC history for, he's the all-time leading rusher as far as yards, touchdowns, total touchdowns, so rushing plus receiving, and yards from scrimmage in ACC history. Like, this dude was elite. Obviously, he has a lot of talent around him. Trevor Lawrence, a quarterback, helps a lot, but man, did he put up numbers. Like, to me, it's really close as far as, and it's more like, what's a better fit? Like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for more of a type of a game breaker guy who in space with speed that can change the dynamic of things? He's really good as a pass catcher. He can pass catch. He can't route run that well, but his hands are fine. He caught 48 balls last year, so obviously he's capable. Could improve in the route running, but to me, he reminds me. My player comp for him is a former Chief. He reminds me of Jamal Charles. That's who I think of, and that's who I see when I see him. And if he's Jamal Charles, hats off to him. If he can stay healthy a little longer than Charles could. Charles had some unfortunate injuries, but Charles is second all time in yards per carry in NFL history behind Jim Brown. So nothing wrong with that comparison. This guy's going to be really, really good. I wanted him to go. I thought he was going to go to the draft last year, and I liked him to go to the Chiefs and add some speed to that roster. He stuck around and didn't do anything to hurt his draft stock. Didn't necessarily like dominate to help it, but I mean, he put up stats, obviously. This guy's a really, really elite, dynamic athlete. So I like him a lot, and his burst is better than anyone else's by far.
I mean, his burst is what comps him this high. He racked 37 rushes that resulted in a gain of 25 or more yards since 2018. That's 9 more than any other college back over that span. He's a solid, good off tackle attempts. He broke 0.32 tackles per attempt, averaging 4.5 yards after contact over the past 3 years, ranking 4th and 1st respectively in college football. He's solid. He's the guy that'll hit that home run for you, and he can just make sure that he's got that explosiveness for your team that you might not have had in your previous running back slot. So, from that standpoint, I think he's just a home run at this. Again, projected 1st or 2nd round, depending on who's available and who's trying to pick him. Only a couple things that kind of, been held against him a little bit is just he sometimes always tries to look for that home run as opposed to just, getting to, these shorter runs and being smart with the football. He gets a little, he runs towards the sidelines a little bit and tries to look for some of these holes that may not be there here and there. But his explosiveness, his elusiveness, and his receiving chops are too good to move him from these top spots. He just has so much to offer. So as far as that goes, running laterally is just kind of like one of those nitpicky things that I would say would be one of those knocks against him. But he's definitely, there's a reason why he's ranked the top on most lists here, even above our number one person that we have on this list. So it's going to be interesting to see where he lands, but man, he's got a lot to offer. And then top here is Alabama, Najee Harris. Najee Harris has been in the spotlight, obviously, along with our number 2. And he, you're always seeing him in these big games because they're always on national television. They're playing in the national championship game. So he's a little bit more in that spotlight, but he brings a lot to the table as well. He's our number 1 ranked running back on this list. Scotty, what do you got for him?
Yeah, I mean, he does everything well. Like, he's a well-rounded back that can kind of do it all. He's built really well. He's big. He's 6'2", 230, really, really big size. Had one of the most agile plays I've ever seen, leapfrogging. This might even be the play. I'm not even sure. It's probably not. But in a national semifinal game, on the edge against Notre Dame, he just leapt over a guy that was just insane. Like, I'd never seen a running back of his size be able to do that. So he's got the athletic traits. He's not breakaway speed like a Travis Etienne, but he does everything really, really well. I'd be really surprised if he's not the first back off the board. I think that's what's going to happen. He can catch. He's natural with his hands, even though he didn't, he caught 43 balls, which at Alabama, a lot of those backs don't catch a ton of balls. That's not really the system they've played throughout the years, but they made a point to get him the ball in space. This guy's going to be really, really good. Shows a lot of potential. Still needs work in pass protection. And just like all these backs, I think he at times as well likes to bounce it outside when he doesn't need to, especially for a guy at 230. He should just run over guys. And at times he tries to get a little too shifty with it and try and bounce it out instead of just putting the pads down and knocking guys over, especially obviously on the 2nd and 3rd levels. So he's got some things to learn, but he's pro ready. He's going to be a really, really good starter in the league day 1. And we'll see where he goes. Like, none of these guys are going to go in the top half of the 1st round. Earliest, I'd be surprised if I could actually see 0 running backs go in the 1st round, and it wouldn't shock me. I think some of these guys, the top 2, I think are 1st round worthy, but You just have to question whether running back is a position that people really, really value. Last year in the draft, we had one running back go in the first round, and it was the last pick of the first round with the Chiefs taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, which I was excited about, but at the same time, I don't value running backs quite as much as others. So, and last year he wasn't worth a first round pick, to be honest. So, it's can be buyer's remorse with the first round pick at the running back position, but there's a couple guys certainly that are worthy of being first round picks. I'd be surprised. I mean, certainly the most that could go in the first round is the top 3 guys we talked about here. But I would think likely 0, 1, or I would think 1 to 2 is most likely, with 1 being the most likely, and it's Najee Harris going the first.
Yeah, it's a receiver league, quarterback league. There's a lot of shifting away from running backs when it comes to getting high picks, because in a sense, you're trying to fill out your team with quarterbacks and receivers and tight ends and offense from those standpoints. I mean, running backs are going to be important in the grand scheme of things, but they're just, again, like you mentioned, not as valued. So even these top 2 or 3, if they end up going in the second round, just it is what it is. That's just the nature of what is the thing moving forward. That's the trend moving forward in the NFL. So, we'll see how this ends up panning out. But Najee, yeah, he's, it isn't every year you see a running back with some of his receiving ability and just his build. He's just a physical specimen too. 6'2", 230. He is he's a good sized running back. Over the past 2 seasons, he's established himself as one of the more reliable receiving backs in the country, dropping just 2 balls on 75 catchable targets, generating the highest passer rating when targeted at the position at 131.9. So he's definitely helping the quarterback, which that's going to be a big factor for a lot of quarterbacks and a lot of offensive coordinators who are looking at that and saying, hey, we want to mix in our running back into our offense a little bit more in the passing game. That's going to be a big piece of what's going to be attractive. His 33 broken tackles after catch since 2018 are 5 more than any other running back in this class. So running back one, he's a running back 1 in the NFL, today's NFL. Has to provide some value when it comes to receiving, but he checks that box. I think some of the knocks against him is just more of his breakaway speed. I don't feel like he doesn't really have as much of the breakaway speed. He only broke off 17 25-plus yard runs since 2018 compared to Clemson's Stars 37. So despite seeing nearly the same number of carries in that span, playing behind an elite offensive line, he hasn't exactly separated himself as a big rusher downfield and breaking away and getting those big gains. So that's going to be the biggest thing here for Najee Harris on maybe the downside of maybe what he can't necessarily get an offer compared to some of the other quicker guys in the class as well. So
Mayday's over here booing us, which is fine. I will say these top 2 are like 1A, 1B for me, and it just depends on who's drafting them and where that fit is and what you're looking for a running back, because they're very, very different as far as styles between Najee and Travis Etienne. So I honestly, it's very, very close.
Yeah. So that's our top 5 running back rankings. So let's just go through them just one more time for you here, just in case you just joined us. If you just joined us, hit that follow button. Make sure that you're here with us each and every Wednesday and Sunday so that you know when we go live, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Insta, or Twitch, all of those different platforms. We are here with you. So Trey Sermon, number 5, Carter 4, Williams 3. Etney, E-T-N. E-T-N. I just read it as Etney, E-T-N, is number 2, and Harris at number 1. So let's dive into our next grouping, and that's going to be our linebacker core here. Our linebacker core is going to be pretty stacked from our top 5 here. So anyone who's looking to fill in on defense and just get that, I know the Broncos are always trying to fill in from that standpoint. If there's one thing that we just haven't really been able to ever get is a solid linebacker to come in and just guard tight ends and make sure that, we can make some big plays on defense when it comes to big tight ends. Kelsey gives us trouble, and then I know a lot of other tight ends around the league give us trouble. So, this is going to be something that I would never hate the Broncos for going for a linebacker, but we'll see what they end up doing. The Broncos are slated to have a pretty decent defense this year. Some people are saying best defense. I don't know if I'd go that far. That's a little bit of a stretch for me. I saw, there was 2 or 3 articles I've seen, and I get fed a lot of these Bronco articles because I'm a Broncos fan.
Were they written by Broncos fans?
They were written by local. Well, there was one that was more of a national, and then the rest were a lot of local guys. But I wouldn't put the Broncos up there quite yet. I don't think that they're going to be necessarily a top defense, in the top 2 or 3 off the bat. But I think they'll have a pretty solid defense. I wouldn't put it up there yet, but we need linebacker help, which maybe we can find one here somewhere in this draft to help bolster what we have going on back there. And I think one of these guys may be a fit, but again, the Broncos are picking so high. Unless they trade back for any reason, that would be the only reason they would end up going here. But I still don't think they would even. I don't know where they would fill those needs if they trade back. We'll see. But number 5. Did you have something on that?
No, I'm gonna comment on what my graphics work did here. Just a second here. Number 5.
Number 5, Baron Browning. Yeah.
Yep. This is a photo that is not Baron Browning. I think I forgot to switch out. This is our number 4 guy. So no big deal. Ignore the photo here because he did not play at Kentucky. Baron Browning played at the Ohio State University.
Here, let's
Baron Browning. Yeah. It's going to be the same picture for both of them, so that's cool.
Production value.
Baron Browning is he's a well-built, big linebacker, long arms, uses his size well. He's a box linebacker that really can go north-south and go with authority and explode downhill especially against the run or underneath routes and attack on underneath routes and get there quickly. He's when he has to go sideline to sideline, not his greatest strength, but north south, he's really a thumper. He can really lay the wood. He's pretty good in zone. He's a good blitz guy, proven to be able to blitz a quarterback from the linebacker spot. So he's more of a Sam linebacker than some of these guys who are Mikes, which I think is a little more important, especially early on in the draft. This is, your Sam's gonna not lead the defense like your Mike will and point out coverages and lead your linebacking core and address situations. Browning mostly got like complete field direction from like his coaches on the sidelines. He wasn't asked to, read and adjust his job ever. He was just more of a single gap, shoot the gap, make a difference, cause chaos kind of guy. So, and he played at Ohio State, so he had a really good front against him. So it's hard to tell. Like, it wasn't like he was getting offensive linemen meeting him a lot of times at the second level to see how he takes on those situations with offensive linemen coming to block him, because he played at Ohio State and he was free to just go after, whoever had the ball quite a bit. So he's wild. He's reckless. He's a guy that could probably get you some helmet penalties in the league. Like, that's how wild it is. You might say, hey, I like that type of guy. Like, cause he's going to be aggressive and he's going to, play as hard as possible at all times. And he will do that. But he might draw some penalties at times. So my player comp for him is like a poor man's Keith Bullock back in the day with Tennessee, who was a phenomenal linebacker. That's why I say poor man's here. I don't think he has quite the skill set of him. Plus the game has changed, and this type of linebacker doesn't quite fit as well in the league as they once did. So he lands at number 5.
Yeah, and
he doesn't even get his photo on here. Didn't even get his picture.
He that's what happens when you're not when you're kind of the bottom end of the top 5 here. Now he's a guy that plays inside linebacker for Ohio State, 6'3", 240. 40 time is 4.76. Projected to between 3 and 5 rounds 3 and 5. And I've seen him on a lot of lists around the bottom half of the top 10 in the linebacker side of things. I've seen him, as high as 6th, 5th in that area as well. So he's kind of a little bit all over the place. He was quiet in the early going before finishing the 2020 season pretty well. He made some nice plays in big playoff games against Clemson and Alabama. He has quality skill, gets some ups, and he has the upside to develop. Now, he's a former 5-star recruit. He has a lot of the physicality and the tools that you need from that standpoint. So, you could see the wheels turning in real time, and as far as what he can bring, noticeable uptick in the speed of play when he's been playing over the course of the season. So he has a lot to bring. His size and his athleticism is tailor made for like an edge. He can potentially play an edge as well if some teams want to kind of move him around and see where he's going to fit best, which would alleviate some of those processing speed issues that he has. So yeah, he's definitely a little bit of more of a project than some of the other guys on this list. So that's where we have him, and that's kind of why he slots in a little bit lower on our list at number 5. So he still has only a 71.8 overall grade when it comes to some of his natural speed and some of those things that Pro Football Focus measures there. So number 4 on our list, Jamin Davis, and this is the correct picture.
Yep. Yeah, he gets 2 slots here. So I will say these top 4. Basically, this is a 4. These top 4 are certainly separate themselves, and any of these 4 could go in the first round in any order. Outside of, I think, the first number 1 overall is going to be the first guy taken at the linebacker spot. And we also have, if you watch our last show, we had a guy from Notre Dame, Jeremiah Wusa Kororama. I can't even say it. The name's just
the
too
names.
long. A lot of people label him as a linebacker. We put him as a safety. We didn't think he was big enough to play linebacker in the NFL, so he's not going to be on this list. But of this list, I think top 1 separates himself, and then 2, 3, 4 I could see going in any order, and all of them in the first round. And I could also, but all of them would be like late first round. So I'd be surprised if all 4 go first round, but they have that potential. Jamin Davis, elite athlete at the linebackers position. Like, when you are drafting this guy, you're taking the athletic projection, because he was only a starter 1 year at Kentucky, inexperienced, and he kind of shows it on the field at times, looks a little lost, shows the athleticism to guard guys and cover man-to-man, but he also gets a little lost at times and doesn't read routes or zone coverage well when he's on defense. And he also, can get a little grabby at times while covering a receiver. But the athletic profile, like, his upside is maybe number 1 of all these guys at the linebacker spot. Like, he's an elite athlete, moves fluid, probably is going to add some more weight. He's only 234 now. Needs to probably put on a little more weight, but has the frame to do it. So I'm not concerned there. Played man coverage in college against slot receivers, tight ends, running backs on wheel routes out of the backfield, and did really well for the most part in all those. So certainly a high ceiling. Just more of a developmental guy than maybe some of the guys in front of him. That's why we have him at 4. Is he's going to take some time to figure out how to play the position, how this works, because he only played 1 year in college basically as a starter. So a lot of development, but if he can develop, his upside is through the roof.
Yeah, I know that 1 year he put up just crazy numbers. His first year as a starter in 2020, he earned an 87.5 grade run defense for the Wildcats, showing some legit sideline to sideline range. He ran the 4.440 at his pro day. So I'll get to his some more about his pro day here in a second. He has all the athletic tools to be a do-it-all linebacker in the NFL. Now, his pro day, this 40, which I just mentioned, was just explosion. He just jumps. His pro day, he was like a specimen. He's a rising prospect, and some teams have him as their top linebacker prospect in the 2021 draft. And his pro day was a big reason why. With his vertical, his 40 time, his athleticism. He kind of played a little inside and outside linebacker. He can kind of be a little bit of versatile in where he goes there, but this is one of the higher ranked linebackers in this grade. I've seen him as high as number 2 on some lists. and he's projected to go in either the first or second round. So the fact that he's at number 2 on a lot of lists and we have him here at number 4, I mean, that just shows you what his ceiling could be. He could have a very high ceiling for this position for whoever gets him. And if they get, he gets into the right defensive coordinator and that can get the best out of him, man, look out, because he can really make some big plays for you. Number 3 on our list in the top 5 linebacker rankings for the 2021 NFL Draft, we have Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton out of Mizzou.
And just to be clear, that is in fact Nick Bolton on the screen right now.
Yeah, so we're good.
Yeah.
We should have just used the Jam and Dave just for every one of these guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bolton is a projected probably late first, early second round pick. Explosive athlete, well built for the linebacker position. Sits at 232, so he needs to probably put some weight on his frame as well to play at the NFL level. But really good burst at getting downfield and converting that power into either whether he's attacking a blocker or the ball carrier and bringing them down. His explosion just translates really well to pass rushing ability. He might be the best blitzer of all these linebackers in the draft, of these off-ball linebackers at getting the quarterback when signed up to blitz. Really, really good at that. Downhill really well. His weakness is in coverage. He mostly wasn't asked to play man-to-man coverage at all at Missouri. Doesn't mean he can't do it. The athleticism is there. They just didn't ask him to. And
bless you. Get it out.
There's 4 there, so that's impressive. I don't do 4 often, but I knew it was coming there. His athleticism there, but he just didn't do man coverage a lot. And when he sunk in zone, his feel in zone coverage wasn't great. He basically just kind of dropped to a normal hook zone level and kind of sunk there and did whatever. So needs to improve as a pass defender, as a guy in the box that can help in the run game or blitz. Really, really elite. Really high football IQ. He has good range, so he has the ability to cover and the athleticism, like I said, and can certainly get through blockers at any level. And he would play right away. So he's a really, really strong player, and we'll see where he ends up.
Yeah, projected to go either second or third round. I've seen him as high as 6 on some, or I've seen him as high as 6th out of linebacker rankings, or low as 6th and high as 3rd. So that's kind of where he's in that range, right where we have him here. He's arguably one of the more instinctive linebackers in this class, ranking up stops on both run and pass over the past 2 seasons. So he has a lot of experience kind of breaking things up in both areas. He's also gotten his hands on the ball quite a bit, despite being small for the position, a little on the smaller side, tallying 11 pass breakups and 2 picks over that span. So he has a little bit of that instinctual balance when it comes to playing the linebacker position. Now, he did not have an impressive 2020 season, and I think has some of the intangibles over the course of what he did before, leading up to some of these games that he did perform pretty well. But as far as that goes, I haven't projected from some of the things that I've seen in the late first, second round potentially that's kind of the higher end of it, but some media has him all over the place. So we'll see where he ends up going. He lacks a little bit of speed and explosion, but yeah, I think there's a few knocks in him. But overall, I mean, 40 time, 4.69, 6 foot, 232. I think he's definitely a solid prospect, and he could be a big addition for a team that is going to be in that, second to third round, most likely where he ends up going. Zaven Collins is coming in at number 2 in our top 5 rankings for the NFL draft for linebackers.
Yeah, this guy is a really, really good athlete. He's much bigger than the last couple guys we talked about. He comes in at 260, 6'4", 260. He's a big guy, but don't let that confuse you for him not having the athleticism. He's a really good athlete. He's massive and long, but he plays much, much smaller and lighter than his weight projects. He might be the best in coverage linebacker, or at least top two as far as coverage goes in this draft. Like he's really, really good against man. He's really, good against zone and spacing. Has really good eyes in zone, and constantly getting in the lane and zone and taking away passes. He had 5 interceptions as a linebacker and 8 pass breakups, which is a really, really impressive numbers. He was also, the 2020 National Defensive Player of the Year and won the Bronco Nagurski Trophy for best linebacker in the country last year at Tulsa. So that's not some small thing. Like, he was at Tulsa. Not a lot of people necessarily see Tulsa, but he was good enough to get those awards and dominate at a level that we haven't seen. So the only knock against him I would have is for his size, he doesn't play quite as physical as you'd expect. Like, he's great in the pass game, but as a run guy, you'd think with the 260 build, he'd dominate a little more and get his hands and beat blockers and overpower guys, and he just doesn't quite show that all the time. Like, he's not as aggressive with his mentality as you'd like to see. So we'll see if he can develop that. But otherwise, he's going to be a really, really solid linebacker. He's another late first, early to mid second guy. He reminds me of like an Anthony Barr in the league. So certainly a Mike guy that could help out in coverage, which to me is, if you don't have that on your team, you need a guy like that a lot.
He's a unique linebacker, 6'5", 260, not physically limited by any means. From looking at his size, has earned a 93% cover grade on his past season with Tulsa. He won't be for everyone, but certain schemes I think will covet what he can bring to the table. Now, there's some skepticism from some NFL scouts. Early on in the start of the fall, many were kind of raving about him, but some were kind of not so hot on him. But a lot of people think that he could fit in a 4-3, Sam linebacker, middle linebacker, while being, a great fit outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense as well. He has explosive speed, athleticism, ability to cover, ability to play in space. Some teams don't like that Collins is not a linebacker who takes on a lot of blocks. He's not very physical in that aspect. I think you touched on that a little bit, Scotty. But I think he's a very interesting guy at this. He's good. He was very good at Oklahoma State, recording 3 sacks and 6 tackles. I think he's definitely one of those guys that I'm going to keep my eye on once the season starts to see, how he performs with whatever team, because he's a different kind of player here. And with all of the different, grades and scouts saying different things about him on what they think he could be or what his ceiling all that stuff is going to be making him that much more entertaining to keep an eye on once the season starts. Next up on our list, our number 1 linebacker, and this one's a no-brainer here. I don't think anyone really has any say in the fact that this guy shouldn't be the number 1 linebacker in this draft taken in the first round. He will be a first-round pick, and it just depends on where he's going to go. But Micah Parsons is coming in at our best linebacker in the 2021 draft. Micah Parsons here, Penn State.
So I believe it's pronounced Micah. I think it's Micah Parsons. And he's really, really good. This is a guy who opted out of 2020, so he didn't participate last year. He was basically he was just a 1-year starter at Penn State, but in that year he flashed enough to, know that he could opt out this past year. Like, he's, been projected as a top 10 guy. As far as just general talent, he's probably a top 10 guy. It's just whether people value that need at the linebacker position to take him in the top 10. I think he'll certainly go top 15 for sure in this draft, top half of that first round. So he does everything pretty, really, really well. Um, he's a natural Mike linebacker, so he's going to make the calls in your linebacking core. He adjusted the line, directs traffic. Even in his 1 year, he was able to show that exceptional burst, can slip linebacker or can slip blockers and knife into the backfield and make tackles for loss. Certainly can blitz well. He's shown that and can get to the quarterback really, really well from the second level. And he has sideline to sideline range. So there's not a lot athletically he can't do. He's a really, really good tackler as well. Excellent tackler, even. Like, he's proven to, once he gets his arms on you, he's going to not let you go. You're not going to break tackles against this guy. So he does a lot really, really well. My one slight nitpicky thing would be, like, he needs to develop his coverage skills, especially in zone. He looks a little lost in zone coverage, but he only played a year in college. So not a surprise that he looks a little lost in zone, but he just doesn't have the feel that, even Collins behind him has, as figuring out the spacing in zone and following the eyes and things like that. So that's something I'm sure he can develop and figure out as he's coached. But to me, the player comp for him is Devin White from Tampa, which is obviously really, really nice player. We've talked about him this offseason a little bit, and a guy that had the responsibility of covering Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl and did a pretty damn good job of it. So Micah Parsons, Devin White's my comparison for him. That's where he can head with that athletic profile and that ability. So like I said, he's going to be a top 15 pick, probably falling somewhere in between, I think 10 and 13 would be my guess.
Yeah, Pro Football Focus says he's one of the best run defenders, blitzers, tacklers at the position in this draft class. He's quite easily the best blitzing off-ball linebacker that they've seen in 7 years of just putting together some of these ratings. They've only ever seen him as a true freshman and sophomore too, so they think he's a true, really solid prospect here. Now, I've also seen, interestingly enough, I've seen a couple other boards and some things that have been said from some pro football scouts that may say that he might be a little overrated potentially. There's some directors, and I'm just delivering some of these, but some directors of college scouting say he's kind of an overrated player. He doesn't really play downhill, maybe not physical taking blocks. He's a freak athlete and pass rusher, but some of those things right there. But then there's also other people from some of these other sources from other teams that say his draft stock maybe, obviously he's not going to fall in the draft. He's a top prospect, but they say shouldn't be going as high as he should. Some team sources say that Parsons is maybe not as good as some of the top 10 linebackers in, like a Devin White or a Roquan Smith, that, maybe there's a little bit more hype around the media that maybe he's not going to be as good as what people think he can be based off of where they have him as the top linebacker here. I just saw,
sounds like every team's trying to talk enough to let him drop to their
yeah, I think that's I don't
think he's like the greatest linebacking prospect we've ever seen by any means, and he's probably not a Roquan Smith. He's probably not some of these guys, but he's really, really, really good and has the best upside and is the best linebacker.
Yep, with
traits at least in this draft.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of jockeying for position when it comes to throwing some information out there to see if he'll fall a little bit further in the draft. I think that people are just trying to maybe bring him back down to earth, so maybe they can get a little bit more of a feel on.
My only issue is I don't love taking a player at his position in the top half of the first round. If I was a GM, I don't value that linebacking position enough to do that. I wouldn't use a linebacking position in the first round until the latter half of the first round. That's the only issue. It's not him as a player. Me personally, I just don't value. There's other positions I think are more important, and you pay out more later on. So like that's got to be a piece of it. Is like thinking down the road, like how much am I going to have to pay this player down the line? Yep. So if I have a left tackle on my team that's pretty good right now, but I'm gonna have to pay him $20 million in a couple years, it'd be nice to draft a new one that I don't have to pay $20 million and I can have serviced that position for a while. Whereas the top linebacker or something like this is a lot closer to, your 13, 14 million.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, there are a lot of people that think he's obviously the best linebacker. So that's why we have him at number 1. There's that value, though, like you were mentioning. You got to look at a little bit over a long-term kind of trend of what a second-round, third-round linebacker that might have a lot of these intangibles might be a little bit more valuable because, you're not paying them. The contracts, the long-term situation just is a lot better, and you can still get a guy that's going to fit your system and be an impact player there. So 100% agree with you there.
But I'll say that with the caveat, not a sure thing by any means, but he's a guy that I think is in the running at least for the Broncos.
Yeah, I've heard a couple people mention local radio stations that said he's an interesting person if they don't end up going quarterback, if they don't trade up and mix things up in the first 5 picks by any means, then he could be in the mix there. So we'll see what ends up happening. But just to round out our top 5 linebackers, Baron Browning, this is not Baron Browning, just a heads up.
Slight error there.
Jamin Davis.
It is Davis.
Mick Bolton, Zaven Collins, and Micah Parsons here, rounding out our top 5 linebackers. So you guys have a little bit more of an idea of who these guys are. So when we do have our draft special coming up here, the first round of the draft, when we air everything live here on the Action Lab, we're going to have highlights. We're going to have all of these guys queued up. We're going to be talking a lot about them, how they fit with the team that drafts them, so that you guys are aware of when you get to your fantasy football drafts, if they're like a lot of offensive players or your special teams and defense, you're trying to figure out who's going to be the impact for your fantasy football team, so on and so forth. We can give you some of those insights early on so you can get those sleepers, you can get those studs that are coming out of this draft and plug them into your lineups for your fantasy football draft. So, yeah, just can't wait for that. That's going to be a lot of fun, Scott. We're going to have a lot of prep going into this, so we hope you guys can all join. Make sure you're hitting that follow button so you guys know when we're going live on that night. We might go a little bit earlier on. We haven't set the schedule for that day yet. We're a little bit still far out, but we might go maybe some pregame and then into
it'll be earlier.
Yeah, we'll go some pregame into later on to wrap up the first round of the NFL draft. So make sure you guys are hitting those follow buttons so we can make sure that you guys are with us, and we want to see all your insights and all the different the comments, all of the opinions on the drafts, everything. So that's what we're doing here. We're prepping you and making sure you know who's who. But that's going to wrap up all of our running back and linebacker rankings here for tonight. Now, we want to shift over. Every Sunday, we like to cover all of our local teams as well. We are live here in Colorado. We're Denver, a little south of Denver here. So we like to make sure we give some love to our Avalanche, Nuggets, Rockies, and Broncos to make sure that all of our local listeners and watchers and viewers, everybody here, gets a little bit of that in their system before the start of the week. We like to recap the previous week in all of Colorado and Denver sports. So we let's shift over to that. Let's see how we did this past week. Now, we have some good stuff going on. We have some rough stuff going on with some of these teams, but we're going to be all over the board. But let's dive into some of these. Let's start out with the Denver Nuggets. There was a lot going on here. We had the Avs had a little postponement, and they had less games, but we'll touch on them here in a minute. So as far as the Denver Nuggets go this week, they end up going, given the circumstances, they go 3-1 this week, past week, with wins against Memphis, Portland, and Houston, and then a loss against Golden State. We'll get into that Golden State loss here in a second. But as far as this goes, we are looking pretty good given the fact that we lost Jamal Murray and we haven't exactly really fallen off the bandwagon or fallen off the wagon. The wheels haven't just come off yet. They're still getting production, and they're still getting some wins here, which is very promising. We'll dive in specifically to some of these games and some of the points and highlights for each of these games. But Scotty, when you're looking at the fact that they went 3-1 this past week, what are your thoughts there?
I'm happy with 3-1. 3-1 looks pretty good. I mean, those first 3 games especially are not easy games, not against the top competition, but Memphis, Portland, and Golden State are all pretty good teams. We've shown recently to struggle against Golden State, so took the L there in a game that we just couldn't hang and didn't play that well. But in games that were tight at the end, where normally I feel like, when we get in tight games and it's late fourth quarter, we rely a lot on Jamal Murray. So winning those 2 games against Memphis and Portland in tight games without Jamal, of course, is important. Like, to build that confidence and get that, how are you going to play these situations when we get to the postseason, which is what obviously really matters now. Is really important to play these close games and feel out how you're going to do it. Obviously, Joker was monumental in both those games. I think that Memphis game was double overtime.
Double overtime. That was a crazy game.
Joker came up huge, played great in that. Portland was a pretty wild game as well. And then the Houston one was the laugh or last night. I think we were up like 22 at half. And the good news from that game is Michael Porter Jr. had his career high, 39 points in 36 minutes. Played really, really well. Didn't look up the stat line, but this second. But the team's playing well for the most part. But we have injury concerns that came up again this week.
Yeah. So in that game, also another record, Facu had a career high 13 assists. He's kind of falling into place a little bit more comfortable. He's been getting more time, so he's been able to get more of a rhythm, I think, with some of those guys that he hasn't been able to play a ton of minutes with. And I thought that he's starting to. His defense too is he's kind of one of those guys that just is if you're on the opposing team, kind of annoying. He's just always up on you at the mid-court. He's already tracking you, and he's already kind of in your face, which I kind of like that. I like the aggressive nature that he brings on the defensive side. But, yeah, that Memphis game to start out the week. So both games, close games. The Memphis game, double overtime, win by 2, 139-137. The Portland game, 106-105, another close one, which came down to a last shot, which was missed by Portland on that last, clanked off the back of the rim from the baseline. So that was another one that we ended up getting a little bit lucky there. But in that Memphis game, 47 points. Jokic had a fantastic game. Go ahead 3-pointer late. That was a huge game. That was one of the games that I feel like is solidifying him even more than he was in that MVP race. He notched his 51st double-double of the season, just missed his 16th triple-double, added 15 rebounds and 8 assists. Barton, we'll get on Barton here in a minute, 28 points in that game. Michael Porter, 21 points. Now, if Jokic does, after this performance, win MVP, he'll be the first center to do so since Shaq did in 1999-2000. Monte Morris has been out, so that's been opening up some minutes for Campazzo and getting some of those guys in and getting more of a rotation there. In the Portland game, Jokic scored 25 points, made key free throws down the stretch to give Denver that 106-105 victory over the Portland Trailblazers. Porter Jr. had 17 points, all in the opening quarter, so he kind of fell off a little bit as that game went on. But Portland is 0-9 this season against the top 4 teams in the West. So Portland's not looking as strong at this point that I thought they would be. Dame Lillard isn't exactly having the season that he's previously had last year, and they've been having a lot of issues with injuries. So Portland's not a team that I have really been too upset about, with when it comes to them falling off a little bit, because they've been so dangerous for us in the same division. So it's kind of been nice to be able to still, be above them in that respect. Austin Rivers ended up getting his first game in that Portland series, or in that Portland game. He finished with 5 points in 13 minutes, and he's been a little bit more of a player that's been, giving some minutes at the point position, and he's been okay. He hasn't nothing to write home about. He can be aggressive at times and get to the rim on a few plays. He's been pretty good, but he's been going to be called on a little bit more moving forward because Golden State, I don't know what it is about our guys in Golden State. Back-to-back games in Golden State, we have guys go down. And this time it was Will Barton. As you may remember, Jamal Murray tore his ACL there a little bit ago, and now Will Barton, hamstring injury, out for the foreseeable future. He's not going to be around for quite a bit if I'm reading those tea leaves right there. So he's going to be gone for a while, which is going to open up a lot of time for guys like PJ Dozier and Campazzo even still, and Austin Rivers. Yep.
Shaq.
All those guys are going to be getting a ton of time. And that was only 59 seconds into the game. So that's what made it worse. Curry started out slow, ended up having a massive game. He ended up scoring 32 points. Draymond had 19 assists and 12 rebounds, 2 points. So he just does everything but score.
How can we get excited? Like, why didn't we just say, just stop? Don't even guard him that heavy. Like, don't let him pass the ball. Let him shoot it.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. Draymond's an oddity, to say the least. And then as far as this last game goes, Houston, the biggest thing was I thought was Michael Porter Jr. just being aggressive. The fact that he was able to come in and take that ownership here, bless you. It was absolutely fun for us to see as Nuggets fans, him taking the reins and just saying, all right, put the team on my back. Nikola Jokic had a great game, obviously 24 points, but I like to see games like this out of Michael Porter Jr. I think that these games are the ones that are going to separate him to the player that he needs to be to make up for what we're not getting from Jamal and Will Barton at this point. Because Will Barton was stepping up a little bit in these last 3 or 4 games when it came to putting some points on the board, helping alleviate some of that from Jokic. So it's been an interesting week.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, to go 3-1 and the last 2 you didn't have, and you lost one of those. Basically, you didn't have Barton. So coming into this year, when you look at our top 3 guards, you list it's obviously Murray.
Yep.
And then Barton's starting at the 2, and then your first guard off the bench is Monte Morris. None of those guys are playing right now. Murray's not going to be back. Barton, it sounds like, is going to be out for a while, although he basically tweeted like, I'll be back this season. So whether that means like he's counting on him making a long postseason run, or he's going to start, or he's going to get back for the postseason. But regardless, he's out for a while, which, I mean, they only have, at this point, they played 60 of 72, so they only have 12 games to go in this shortened season. So without those 3 right now, Campazzo, like you said, played really well the other night, even though he only made 1 field goal from the field. Did have the 13 assist. Joker. Porter, I love it. Like, he was 8 of 12 from 3, so he was on fire from 3. 39 points. We need that from him. I love that. I'm a big Porter guy. I want to see that against a team that's not Houston.
Yeah,
I want to see that against a team that is, somebody that's playoff caliber, a little more aggressive on defense. If he can do that against those better teams, I'm going to be thrilled, because we absolutely have to have it. Like, he put up 39, Joker put up 24, and actually PJ Dozier played really well in this game. So PJ Dozier, with all these guys out, is going to be really, really important, because he's our only athletic guard that can kind of make things happen. Like, Will Barton, I'm not the biggest fan of, but what he is, especially with Jamal Murray out, is he's the only guy that can kind of penetrate and create in that sense. Like, none of our other guys can really do that and take the ball off the dribble and create. So, and by create, I mean create his own shot, generally, if you're Barton. But he can do that. And now we got to rely on PJ Dozier. We'll see what he can do with more minutes. He's going to be really important. Played great the other last night. 10 of 13, 3 of 5 from 3, 23 points, 7 rebounds. played amazing last night. So we'll see. He's certainly inconsistent, but if he gets more minutes, maybe he gets more comfortable, and maybe he can be that piece that we need. But I don't know. Right now, we're still pegged to play the Lakers, but the Lakers lost, I think, a couple to the Mavs. So the Mavs and Lakers are like battling it out for that 5-6 now. I don't get me wrong. I'd still rather play the Mavs. I'd rather play
the
Luka.
Mavs. Yeah.
I'd rather play Luka.
Now, PJ Dozier, he's the closest comparison to Will Barton on our team. He's a very similar player. He just doesn't get a lot of the time because of just the way Michael Malone puts together his lineup and his rotations. So I think he can be a big impact player. You know a name we haven't mentioned on this quite yet is Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon is one of those guys that I think could be one of those. He needs to elevate his game a little bit. And in that sense, I think he just is still getting comfortable with how things are rolling. Scotty, what do you got? Yeah, okay. I think we got some kiddo issues, which aren't issues. They're kiddo stuff, which it happens, right? But it's going to be interesting to see how they can draw up these plays. I think we saw that initial Aaron Gordon kind of mix of how to get him some of those, passes in the lane and get him cutting and everything else. He's kind of fallen off a little bit from those first couple games that he ended up coming in and making that immediate impact. But now things have kind of been shifting over to more of getting Michael Porter Jr. the ball, getting some of the ball in some other guys' hands. And, he's been doing well for the Nuggets at this point. But I think there are some things that he needs to maybe that's a Michael Malone thing, drawing up more plays and trying to get him more involved and get him in a nice rhythm when it comes to working with the rotation. Because, again, you can get comfortable with a couple guys like a Will Barton, like a Jamal Murray, and then all of a sudden they go down, or you don't have a Monte Morris, and things start evolving a little bit. Things start shifting to the point where, you have to start maybe switching things up in the game plan. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here with Aaron Gordon. He's not exactly, feeling... maybe he's not feeling the same rhythm that he did initially when you had a lot of those guys in the lineup. But overall, it's been a fantastic run for the Nuggets here. Now, you'll see that coming up, we got another run against Memphis. Again, Memphis gave us a nice little run for our money. Now, Ja Morant had an insane game. I don't know if you guys watched that game, but Ja Morant was incredible. That was one of the best games I've ever seen Ja Morant play, in a while. And not only that, but DeAnthony Melton was just a sharpshooter in that game for three. We haven't exactly been doing a great job at defending the three recently. It's been kind of a hit and miss when it comes to defending those big three-point shooters. Obviously, you can't defend like a Steph Curry or anything, but I mean, those are a little bit tougher to manage. But as far as everything else goes on that front, it's something the Nuggets need to really consider when trying to game plan for some of these guys, because DeAnthony Melton kept them in that game with his three-point shot, and he was just unstoppable for a short period of time through that game. So Memphis is one that's coming up. That's at home. I think that's a winnable game. I think the Nuggets are still in a great place to continue this run. New Orleans is a little bit of a tougher matchup, I think, with some of the guys that they can throw at you. Zion is, I don't know if we have a guy that can really, I don't think anybody on any team has a guy that can really, lock him down. He's just a freak of nature. Toronto's a winnable game, and then we're finishing off on May 1st on Saturday with the LA Clippers. That's going to be a nice game to kind of take a look and see how we stack up against a really, really hot Clippers team. Clippers have been one of the best teams over the last month in the Western Conference. They are just starting to separate themselves and get into that pace of, that closing stretch for their playoff run, and I think they have a lot to bring to that game. It's going to be a fun one to watch. I hope the Nuggets can have enough gas at the end of this week to make a strong case for themselves in that game and try to win that one. But they'll have some time between Thursday and Saturday to get some rest and maybe even get Monte Morris back potentially by the end of the week. I feel close. He's dealing with a hamstring issue. Those don't necessarily go away overnight. So when it comes to that, I'm predicting if I had to make a pick on how many wins the Nuggets would get this week coming up here, I got wins against Memphis. I think we can get a win against New Orleans and Toronto, and I think we drop the Clipper game. I think the Clippers might be a little bit tough for us. So I'm hoping if we have another 3-1 week ahead of us, I'll feel good about that. I'll feel really good about that. Being fourth, having the Lakers kind of still sputtering a little bit, even though Anthony Davis is back. Anthony Davis for the Lakers is still on a minutes restriction, so we'll see how that impacts the Lakers over the course of the week. Obviously, he was in a couple games this week where he was a little frustrated with how much time he was getting. He thinks he can play a lot more minutes than he has been getting. But when it comes to just keeping him healthy, the Lakers are going to do everything they can to make sure he's not getting hurt before the postseason starts. So it's going to be interesting, but I definitely think it could be a 3-1 week when it comes to the week coming up here for the Denver Nuggets. I was just kind of covering what we have ahead of us here.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had my 4-year-old son walked in here and I had a bit of a situation real quick, so I had to jump away.
No worries.
Sorry to abandon you there. Yeah, looking at the week ahead, 3 of those 4 at home. Yeah, you need to go 3-1 in this. Memphis, New Orleans. We haven't played well against New Orleans, though.
I mentioned that with Zion and Brandon Ingram.
Yeah.
They're tough guys to cover for us, at least. So it's going to be a tough one there.
Memphis will want revenge, and then at LA Clippers. We got that whole next week. I think we play. I'm sorry, that Saturday's the Clippers. I think following in that week, I think we have the Jazz and the Lakers as well. So,
yep,
that'll be a really big week, and we'll see what happens. I think the Nuggets are pretty much locked in at 4. I'd be surprised if they finish anywhere else than 4. It'll just be a matter of where teams around them finish and where they match up in that first round. Right now it's the Lakers, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So we'll see, because Anthony Davis, as mentioned, when you're away, Anthony Davis is still on a minutes restriction. So they're still, maybe sputtering along, maybe not necessarily getting as much value out of him as they would like, as much as he would like to play. So take advantage of these wins while we can, while the Lakers are still kind of coming back and working their way back into a rhythm here, because right now the Clippers game, that's going to be the toughest game of the week. They are on fire right now. They're in that postseason form, and they aren't losing too many games. They are playing very, very well, and they're a terrifying team at this point. But I want to dive in. We have a couple other things that we want to touch on. So let's dive into the Avalanche here. Avalanche had a kind of a weird week. They ended up going 1-1, but one of those games was postponed from the previous. They had a 3-game stretch where they were dealing with some COVID issues there. Now, just to highlight some of the pieces of some of these games here, on the Thursday St. Louis win, it was 4-2 win over the Blues. Andre Burakovsky scored twice, and Brandon Saad and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare added goals as Colorado Avalanche clinched that playoff berth. So they are already good to go in the playoffs at this point in the week when they got that win over St. Louis, which the Colorado Avalanche improved to 18-1-2 in its last 21 games. They're 8-1-0 in April after finishing a league-best 12-2-3 in March, setting franchise records for wins and points in a month, and they're 5-1-0 against the Blues this season. So they're just dominating when it comes to the month of April was just it's crazy what they're doing. They returned to the ice for the first time since April 14th. They had 3 games postponed for the COVID, as mentioned. Since March 5th, the Blues have posted a 5-11-4 record. The 5th place Blues are 1 point behind the Coyotes for the final playoff spot in the West Division. So Arizona has played 3 more games than them. But in goal for the Avs, Devin Dubnyk, who we acquired from the Sharks, arrived in a trade from San Jose before the deadline. He's won 3 of his last 4 starts against the Blues, dating back to his time with the Sharks. So Grubauer is still kind of on and off with that protocol list. He's hopefully going to be back soon. Hopefully we don't have to worry about missing him too much longer, because he's one of the better goalies in the NHL at the moment. By the way, also in this game, Bednauer coached his 360th game with the Avs, passing Bob Hartley for the most in Colorado history. He's second to Quebec's Michael Bergeron, 634 in franchise history. So, yeah.
Michel.
I'm sorry.
Michel Bergeron.
Michel.
Yeah, I mean, the Avs have had their little hiatus for about a week with the COVID stuff. Came back, went 1-1 against the Blues. Still didn't have some guys. Grubauer didn't play in either of these games, although he just came off the COVID list for that game on Saturday, but he hadn't really done anything with the team at all, so they didn't play him in that game. The good news is the Avs have, going back prior to this stretch, and their last 6 are 5-1, and Grubauer has only played in one of those games. So Grubauer, who's been phenomenal in goal for him, only played in one of those games, and they still were able to go 5-1 in that stretch. So that's something earlier on in the year, like, they couldn't do. They weren't winning without Grubauer. The bad news for them is the Vegas Golden Knights have won 9 straight. So all of a sudden, the Avs are in second in the division, and even when we talked last week, I think the Avs had the best record in the NHL, and now they're number 2 in their own division. Vegas is up 4 points on them. Granted, they've played 2 more games, so the Avs would need to win their next 2 in order to match Vegas. Do have a matchup with Vegas this coming Wednesday.
Big game,
which is going to be a really, really important game. But not only is Vegas hot, but Minnesota, right behind Colorado, is now won 7 straight. So between those two, they've won 16 straight games, which is just insane. And now the Wild are a point behind the Avs, but they've also played 2 more games. So the key with that is, like, you look at the Wild. So you had the Vegas at 70, Avs are at 66 points, Wild at 65, and then 4th place right now is Arizona at 47 points, and the Blues are at 46 and have played 3 less games, so they're more likely the likely 4 seed at this point is the Blues, who the Avs played a couple times this week. But there's such a drop off, and there's such an advantage to getting that 1 seed and playing a team that's, you know, not Vegas or not Minnesota. Not that I'm afraid of Minnesota, but Vegas is going to be. I mean, that might be a matchup of the top 2 teams in the league that we see, you know, in the, you know, divisional round of the playoffs in the NHL this year with how they're doing the playoff series. So the Avs have a lot of important games down the stretch to make sure that playoff positioning is good. This week they actually just added, so they actually play tomorrow night, which wasn't originally on the schedule, but they filled in. They play the Blues again tomorrow night. So that's an added game this week. So they'll have 4 games this week. Pretty important, but they play, I say tomorrow night, but it's 5:00 our time at St. Louis tomorrow. So added game this week. Got to win that one. That at Vegas one's going to be really, really important. Yep. And then at San Jose, they need to take both those because San Jose is a really, really not so good hockey team. So every game, even though they've clinched a playoff spot, they're in, things like that, like seeding right now, especially in the division they are in, is really important. So they got to win.
Would you say so? Luckily, the Blues, we've kind of dominated, as mentioned, the matchups with the Blues over the course of the season. So I'm not too concerned about getting some solid wins against the Blues. Vegas is going to be a big one. But you were talking about the division, man. This has got to be one of the better divisions in all of hockey when it comes to the toughest teams that are up there in the point standings. I mean, you have separated those first 3 teams by such a short margin. Man, that's an impressive division in all of hockey right now.
Yeah, I think overall, like 70, 66, and 65, you look at the other divisions, the Canadian division, the leaders at 65 points. Leader in the East is at 67, and then 68 in other divisions. So I would put it up like the Central's top heavy. I will say that like the Central and the West are very, very top heavy with maybe the bottom teams. I think the Central's bottom teams are way worse than the West. And the East is a tough division because there's more balance there. I actually, outside of the bottom two teams, everyone else is decent. So, and I actually think the Canadian division is the worst division of all the divisions this year. So yeah, those top three teams especially are playing lights out. Like I said before, the Avs just lost. I think they were on like a 6 or 7 game winning streak. So if you take that game out, between the top three teams in that division, they had won, like 23, 24 games in a row between the three of them. So, gonna be tough. It's not gonna be an easy road for the Avs, unfortunately, when they do in fact make the postseason. But like I said, every game is gonna be important. Get it done.
There's a lot of ats on there. They're all, as we mentioned, there's a lot of away games down the stretch with the Avs. There's not too many home games left, so they got to really make this a big stretch down the rest of the season, because playing on the road, it takes its toll on you. And I will say, it wouldn't shock me if the Avs started going through some little bit of a slump based off of just the fatigue of being on the road so much. But we'll see if they can manage to ride the ship and ride the storm here. I think they can, if they have a good stretch all the way through the rest of the season and get some quality wins, that's going to just be that much more motivating for them. The fact that they're able to navigate that gauntlet on the road, get those wins, stay competitive in our division, and be able to potentially win it. That would just make it that much more, positive for them going into the playoffs.
The good news for the Avs is they do have this game against St. Louis, and they have 2 against Vegas. And other than that, they play San Jose and LA 4 times each. And neither of those teams are any good at all right now. They're not playing well at all. So 8 of those 11 games down the stretch are against bad hockey teams. Obviously those 2 Vegas games are especially going to be monumental. And then this one tomorrow against St. Louis. So we'll see what happens, but their strength of schedule is very, very weak, going down the stretch. So that's one thing working in their favor as we go here. Whereas, I think Vegas and Minnesota, actually, the teams that are battling it out at the bottom, play a couple times at least. And Vegas has to play Arizona, Minnesota, St. Louis, and Colorado. Like they only have 1 game against San Jose. That's not one of the top 5 teams in the division. Whereas the Avs, 8 of their last 11 are against the bottom teams in the division. So that's the one advantage. But those games against Vegas are going to be huge.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I can't wait to watch that Vegas game on Wednesday. It's going to be a lot of fun. Those games, they've been splitting the season series pretty much all season long. They have like a 4-game set or a 2-game set, and they always end up getting a win, getting a loss. It's back and forth. It's going to be super competitive in each of those games because there's a lot on the line. So let's move on to the Rockies here. Rockies had a really good week, in my opinion. I feel like they played very well. They got 4 wins this past week and a loss against Philly. So I don't know if Mayday's still in the chat or not. Unfortunately, Mayday, you didn't necessarily have a lot of luck with the series here in Colorado. But great week. They're right now, and I don't know. I think they're 8-13. I didn't update the record there. So they're 5th in the West at the moment, which, still at the bottom.
Out of 5.
Out of 5. They're still at the bottom. And they're still, still working their way back into this season. Let me update that 8 there. So positive week though. They got a sweep against Houston and they won the series against Philadelphia. I think that this was really a momentum booster for a lot of the guys on the team that just like, all right, we got a solid week under our belts. Let's carry this momentum into next week. There's a lot to look forward to, and we're getting some good offense. We're getting some good pitching performances as well that are keeping us in games. So, Yeah, Scotty, what do you think about the Rockies this past week, and what do you have anything to look forward to into next week?
I mean, obviously the best week of the season for them so far to this point. Going 4-1 takes them from a 4-12 record to an 8-13 record. Looks a little better on paper, but the big thing to look at is their run differential. They're 8-13. That doesn't look great still. Their run differential, they're a +6 on the season. They're a +6, so they have outscored the opponents. And let's keep in mind that a third of their games, 7 of their 21 games, have come against the Dodgers, the best team in baseball, who they went 1-6 against. Didn't play that great, but at the same time, and that means in every one of their other games, 7-7, with a very, very large plus run differential in those games. So they're unlucky that they've gone 7-7 in those. So there's some promise there. There's some hope there. The starting pitching's been really, really good. And Kyle Freeland sounds like he's going to be back very, very soon. He did a bullpen session yesterday that went really, really well. So he's not far off, which can eliminate their weakest starter, which right now looks like it might be Sensatella, who's struggling a little bit. But Gray and Marquez have pitched really, really well. Austin Gomber, after his first game jitters as the big trade piece and the Nolan deal, has pitched really, really well. And even Chichi Rodriguez has pitched really, pretty well for what we would expect.
Chichi.
So when Freeland gets back, that starting rotation is one of the best starting rotations the Rockies have ever had. The problem is their lineup, which has been inconsistent. Ryan McMahon's been playing phenomenal baseball. Going into today was tied for the league lead in home runs with 7, and played phenomenal defense at second and third at times. So he's been a bright spot. Story finally, he hadn't had a home run until this series against the Phillies, and he hit one a couple nights ago, and he did have a grand slam today, which was, the emotion he showed when he hit that grand slam was like, you could tell he was frustrated with the whole season. Like, he was like, let's go. Like, he flipped a bat. He looked at the dugout immediately and it was pumped up, and he crushed that ball. I didn't look at the distance, but that almost went onto the concourse and left. So he crushed that ball. That was a no doubter. Good to see. But here we go. They're 8-7 at home. They're 0-6 on the road, and now they have a week on the road. So, they went 0-6. They went 0-3 at the Giants, and then 0-3 at the Dodgers on their last road trip. They start again now with 3 at San Fran to start this road trip, and then play 4 at Arizona. So important road trip. They gotta, gotta have a winning road trip. You can't afford to even go 3-4 on this. Like, to build momentum, you gotta have a winning road trip. Can't play like they did not score runs on their last road trip. So gotta put up some runs, gotta get the bats going on the road, which they didn't do at all in their last one. But you look at them and they lost 13 games. 10 of those games have been by 2 runs or less. So they've been really, really competitive throughout. And that's why they have that +6 run differential on the season. The Giants are 14-8, so it looks like a mismatch on paper, but the Giants run differential is +10 on the year. So they're separated by 4 runs in run differential, and the Giants just happen to win those close games, and the Rockies aren't right now. So the Rockies hopefully can fall into place and win some of those close games that they haven't been winning, and continue to move in the right direction like they did this past week.
I'm hoping it's a catalyst. So 4-1 in a week, but then the way they finished the week, they finished the series with Philadelphia, the grand slam, the excitement, the everything from Trevor Story. I think that those are things that really make a difference for a team that has kind of struggled over the course of like the early parts of the season. Now you see that and you're just getting jacked up. Your pitching staff is looking good. The bats are starting to swing a little bit better. And man, that could be a huge, huge boost just to launch into the next week. And I'm going to be super curious to see how they play this next week, especially on the road. If they can win, at least 2 or 3 games coming up in the next, stretch, they could be on a nice little trajectory at this point early on in the season. You mentioned a lot of stats of, when it came to the run differential, like they're putting up runs, they're winning games by a good margin. 12-2 today, 7-5, 6-3, and 6-2 in Houston, or against Houston here at Coors Field. So, I mean, I think that this is that point. I honestly think is a very pivotal point early on in the season to maintain this momentum, because nothing is worse than when you go into a nice run like this and all of a sudden you lose like 2 of 3 or 3 of 4, and all of a sudden all that momentum is lost and you're back into the slums of everything. So I think this is a very, very important stretch next week to kind of set the tone for the next month.
Yeah, I mean, on the last road trip, it all comes down to the bats. I think the starting pitching is going to be fine on this road trip, but in their last road trip, they put up 1, 3, 0, 0, 2, and 5 runs. So over the course of 6 games, they scored 14 runs, which is just over 2 a game. That's why they went 0-6.
Not great.
Really, really poor effort with the bats. So got to get those going on this road trip. I've said, and I think the Rockies hitters have the toughest job in baseball. Everyone's like, oh, they have a big advantage because they play at Coors Field. I think it's just as equal a disadvantage when they head out on the road, because the ball does move a little different at home versus on the road, and they're seeing eye and what they think the ball's going to break, and what it does at home, it does differently on the road. Mm-hmm. So it's really, really hard to adjust, and people don't think about that. Like, for the longest time, I've said, and people probably think I'm crazy, the Rockies mentality hitting wise and field position wise should be, you take your top, like, depending on your roster and how good it is, top heavy, take your top like 4 hitters, and they play all the time, right? And then you have a set of 4 or 5 guys that strictly play at home, and you have another 4 or 5 guys that strictly play on the road. Because of how the ball moves, like, try that out. I don't know. This might be a season, if we get out of contention at some point, to try it, like, and see if that works, because of how different it is versus home and road splits. Like, that's why everyone's like, oh, look at how good the Rockies hitters are at home and they're bad on the road. But they're bad on the road because the ball moves differently out of the pitcher's hand. So while they have an advantage at home, absolutely, they have a disadvantage on the road. Not to mention, they play a majority of their games in pitcher ballparks like San Fran, LA, and San Diego. So a lot of pitchers ballparks within the division. So all that combined, and it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. I think the Rockies in their history have only had one season where they had a above 500 record on the road, and they went I think they went 42-40 that year. So they've never been a good road team ever in their history. So they got to figure it out. You can't go 0-6 like they just did. So like I said, they need a winning road trip here. They need to go at least 4-3 here.
Definitely keep my eye on them this week coming up. See how many wins they can rattle off and keep this momentum, because I think it's huge. So finally, before we wrap up the show here, we want to touch on the Broncos. The Broncos are going in. There's a lot of rumors going back and forth. We're not going to, go into some of like the deep ins and outs of this quite yet, because we're going to get probably a little bit more insight as we get closer to the draft with some of the leaked information. But there are some reports out there saying that we're still considering putting together something as far as a quarterback is concerned to have a challenger for Drew Lock. So whether that's going to be a quarterback in the draft, or we end up going to get maybe another quarterback. I saw one report of Teddy Bridgewater popping up locally. I don't know if that's going to be a national kind of thing where, that's kind of out there for other teams and other, areas of the country. But it's kind of interesting, right? You always get the local reports because you always get consumed with all of those same reporters and beat writers and different things. But I've also seen a lot of people saying that the Broncos are a top team to trade up potentially, and they've been linked with Trey Lance. There's also a lot of information coming back and forth. The draft is going to start at number 3 with whatever the 49ers end up doing. I think the 49ers are the key to everything happening in the top 5 or 6 give or take, whether the Broncos move up, who's going to still be there, what other teams could potentially trade up as well. But there's a lot that, some people have been saying that, the Niners are going to be potentially taking quarterback from Alabama, and like that's something that could alter the way the draft ends up panning out. And some have said, they could take another quarterback, and that would change things as well. So it kind of starts and ends with what the 49ers end up choosing and what they end up doing at that third pick. But the Broncos are kind of in that weird spot, like playing the waiting game, and they're looking for a quarterback. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing.
From what I've heard, as far as Denver goes with quarterbacks, is if you are a Denver fan and you want them to have a quarterback or take a quarterback in this draft, you are rooting for Mac Jones, the Alabama quarterback, to be taken by San Fran at 3. That opens things up. I've heard that without a doubt, Denver likes one of the two of Trey Lance and Justin Fields, but they haven't revealed. Like, my source has not told me or hasn't specified on who of those two they like. One of those two they like, one of those two they would pass on. I think they definitely pass on Mac Jones, and the top two, Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, are definitely going to be gone. So there's a chance that Denver ends up with, if Mac Wilson goes 3 to San Fran, that they could make a move up to either take Fields or Lance, depending on which one they like, which I don't know which of those two they like the most. But they like one of them. But I still think it's more likely that they either stay put and take a different position, or maybe the most likely thing, honestly, is I've heard a lot of things about Denver moving back and picking up additional draft picks, which I wouldn't hate for them at all. I think that'd be a really smart move. If they could move back, not like significantly back. They move from their spot at number 9 to maybe like a 15, 16, middle of the round, and pick up like a second round pick or an early third or something like that. I think that could be beneficial for Denver, because there's no one at 9, if they don't go quarterback, that's like they can't get someone at 15 that's like a similar value. Sure. So to me, that makes a lot of sense, because at that point, I think if they don't go quarterback, I actually think they're probably targeting defense, whether it's like a Micah Parsons like we talked about, or one of the top 2 corners in Surtain or Horn. I think those are the 3 guys that are, if they stay at 9 and it's not a quarterback, that they are likely targeting. But who knows? I'm sorry. And there's one offensive tackle, Rashawn Slater. If he's there, I think they would target him as well. I don't think Penei Sewell would be there at 9, but Slater has the potential to be there at 9, and he might be the pick as well. Like I think I said earlier in the week on Wednesday that he could definitely be the pick. And so those are the 4 guys. If it's not quarterback and they stay at 9, I think they're targeting.
Now, what would you put as the odds that they keep the number 9 selection? So either they keep it, they stay at 9, or they either trade up or trade back. What are the chances they stick at 9 and take somebody at 9?
Good question. I would probably say, if I were I'm going to make it more specific. I'm going to give a percentage on moving up, percentage on staying there,
like
and a percentage on moving back. Moving up, I'd put it like 15%. I don't think it's that likely. Staying put, I'd put it like, now I had the numbers in my head a second ago, and now they're gone. I think I'd put it at about 50. I think staying put's around 50, and then 35% they move back. So I think most likely with any pick in the draft, the most likely thing is that you're going to stay put. But me putting that only at 50% means like there's a big potential they can move on from that. I just think it's more likely they move back than move up, in my opinion.
That's fair. I mean, you're giving it a 50-50 shot that they're not going to have that 9th pick. They're going to be moving one way or another to make some moves, whether that's moving up, because the only reason they'd move up is to get a quarterback that potentially will drop based off of what San Francisco does. And then let's say everything is gone by the time, they get to that 3rd pick, and everything's kind of just not looking great. I think the minute that San Francisco pick is read, the Broncos are going to be. That's either the shit or get off the pot moment, right? You got to figure out what you're doing quick, because at that point, your guy's going to either be there or not, and you got to make some moves because other people are also in the mix. I mean, I've heard of other teams that have potentially. People have said New England could potentially move up and try to make some moves. You've heard a lot of different things that have just been kind of popping into some of these sources and media groups that have been putting this information out. Now, some of it could all be just, BS, and people are just throwing out just things to get movement one way or another on teams making some decisions and trying to jockey for position, as we mentioned earlier. It's going to be interesting, but the Broncos have been getting a lot of national kind of spotlight because they're the wild card in a lot of this too, to try to figure out what they're going to be doing. A lot of the first few picks, they're all going to be quarterbacks, or you have, some big time names on the offensive side of the football. There's going to be a lot of defensive side of the football that's going to be available towards the bottom half of the 10 and into the between 10 and 20 range. So trading back, you're going to get some value, and I don't disagree with you on the fact that you can get some really, really solid impact players just by trading back. And, you obviously have Drew Lock there. Drew Lock, you haven't exactly said that he's not the guy, but you're not. The fact that you're looking as hard for a quarterback means you don't think he is the guy either. So it's such a fascinating. This is going to be one of the crazier drafts as a Broncos fan for me that I've seen in a while, because usually they have one of those top picks and they kind of just get like a Von Miller or whoever's the best player off the board. This is a little bit more strategic, and it's going to put our GM to the test here to see what he ends up doing. And it's going to be coming out of this draft. I'm going to predict it now. There's going to be a lot of grades coming down on the GM on what he ends up doing, whether or not he's going to be sinking or swimming, because this is the first time we've had somebody new put to the test here in a draft situation for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, that's why I think he might hold off on quarterback. I don't know if you've got a feel for which one he likes between Trey Lance and Justin Fields. But interesting enough, though, speaking of that third pick with the 49ers, before you answer that question, so it's moved from, it was initially when they moved up, everyone thought it was going to be Mac Jones. In the betting odds, at least. And then all of a sudden, it jumped to Justin Fields. He was the large front runner. And recently, it's moved back to Mac Jones being back to a slight front runner on that. Ian Rappaport, two hours ago, said the 49ers, according to a lot of different sources, are down to two players. And it's Mac Jones and Trey Lance. So it sounds like Justin Fields, according to Ian Rappaport and the sources he's hearing, and that could all be smoke, but I don't know why the 49ers would need to put out a lot of smoke, because they know who's going in front of them. So there's not like they have to hide who they're going to pick as much, because they know it's going to be Lawrence and it's going to be Wilson in front of them, and they basically have the pick of the litter after that. So
yep.
It sounds like it's either going to be Mac Jones and Trey Lance, and we'll see what happens. So Justin Fields, who turned into an odds-on favorite just like a week ago, all of a sudden, according to Rappaport and his sources, isn't in the mix for the Niners at 3. So if that's who the Broncos are targeting, that's good. If they're targeting Trey Lance, that's not a great sign. So I don't know if you got a feel, or who do you prefer based off of what?
Yeah, I think, as far as what I've heard and the name that's come up more, Deb in chat, hopefully he does better than John O. That's easy to do. I think the bar is set pretty low. Now I've heard more Trey Lance over the course of this whole period because of the dynamic nature that he can bring. and that name has surfaced more so than I have heard from Fields. Fields hasn't exactly been a name that maybe Fields has popped up in a couple different mock drafts this last week, but up until this point, I haven't heard a lot of Fields' name is a candidate for the Broncos as much as Trey Lance. Now, I would like Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance could be, a very dynamic person to slot in. Like, it's someone we've never had a quarterback like him in a Broncos uniform, really, which I think is something that it would be exciting to see if he can come in and challenge for that top quarterback position. He just has a nature about him that I don't think a lot of guys have ever had in a Broncos uniform. So that's kind of why I lean a little bit more towards Trey Lance. He kind of fits a little bit more of that dynamic quarterback that we have started to see more of in the NFL, with guys who can be athletic and throw the ball. And so we'll see if that ends up panning out for them. But keep in mind, there's not a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be taken. So it's interesting because I think some of the teams in between the Niners and the Broncos, some of them already have quarterbacks in place that they're not going to be looking for quarterbacks. So with that being said, let's say, you have Trey Lance and you have Fields coming down the pipeline, and you have a couple teams that don't need quarterbacks. Maybe one of them falls to you, and it's maybe the one that you want. Who knows? I mean, it's kind of going to be interesting there too. But do you take the gamble? Because obviously you have other teams that are willing to jump up and trade up for them as well, like a New England, like some of these other teams that potentially are trying to. Atlanta's kind of in the mix for potential, depending on who's there. Because I've seen either Atlanta taking a tight end or a quarterback, depending on Pitts or I think Trey Lance is there on their board as well, right?
Yeah, that's what I've seen. They like Trey Lance a lot, but I've more recently seen that they might go Pitts and stay away from quarterback. Detroit at 7. I feel like if there's a quarterback they like on the board, they should take him because they just traded away Stafford. I know they traded for Goff, but I don't know if you can fully believe in Goff, and might make a move at 7. Carolina at 8, you would think, but they obviously just traded for what's his name from the Jets?
Oh, Darnold.
USC?
Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold, yep. So maybe they'll hold off. Cincy at 5 is not taking one. Miami at 6 isn't taking a quarterback. So it might be some trade ups, like you said, with New England. I could see Washington wanting to make a move. The Giants are interesting. I don't think they'll move up for a quarterback, but I think they'll hold off. I think they'll give Jones another year. I agree. So I think the 3 big teams, there's also the Bears that would want to move up maybe for a quarterback.
Maybe.
They need one, maybe more than any team. Bears, Chicago, Washington, and New England are the 3 teams they pick. New England's 15, Washington's 19, Chicago's 20. So those are teams that I think might look to move up and try and target a quarterback if the guy they like is there. It'll be interesting with Peyton and the Broncos. If let's say, I don't know, let's just say one of Fields or Lance, it doesn't even matter which one, is there at 9 and the Broncos have their pick and they either take another guy or they trade out of that pick and move back. There's going to be a lot of Denver fans, regardless of whether it's Lance or Fields, that are really, really upset that they don't take that quarterback. So he has a lot of pressure to be right on whoever that guy is. If that guy's there and they don't take him, he has a lot of pressure right off the bat to be right about not taking that quarterback. If that quarterback works out and is at an all-pro level, that's a really, really, really rough start for him.
It would be monumental disaster for him in this role as his first, being able to get somebody there. And I think, I'm not gonna lie, I don't want to know if I want to be in his shoes for this draft, because the Broncos are a team that has historically had success, right? They're not used to losing seasons as frequently as like maybe some of these other, like the Browns or the Dolphins. You know, like they're historically a team.
We're eliminating the 10 or 11 straight they've lost to the Chiefs, obviously.
we're not discussing some of those things, but I mean, there's no patience. Denver's a place. It's a team and a franchise and a city that there's no patience. You need to start winning as soon as you possibly can, because this fan base, I mean, they're gonna have your head if you don't. And we've seen it in the past. There's not a lot there when it comes to patience from the Denver fans, and so you better make the right call. You better make the call that's gonna get you, renews your contract down the line. This is a huge pick, and so we'll see what ends up happening. But that's gonna do it for our Mile High Spotlight here. A lot to talk about. We spent a lot of time on the Broncos, more than I thought we would, and we're talking about the trades. I mean, the top 10 is just fascinating. I could talk about the top 10 and the picks and all the different situations going on for a while, which is why we're doing such a big draft special coming up. So if you guys are here and you guys aren't following, hit that follow button. Make sure that you know when we're going live, because we are going big on our big draft special coming up here very, very soon. So we want to touch on all of the players. We want to make sure you guys know who's who. We're going to have another spotlight here coming up potentially on, I think, Wednesday. We have offensive and defensive linemen that we haven't covered. I think that's the last groups, right?
Yeah, I think we'll run through that pretty quick, because I think we might want to do a mock draft on Wednesday as well.
Yep, mock draft.
So dive in that. We might do one where it's like kind of like a Kuiper and McShay on ESPN, where we go back and forth. You make a pick, I'll take the next team, and we'll go back and forth kind of thing. We'll do it live.
I like it.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of probably surprise picks and some strange things happening in our mock draft, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and we hope you guys can be a part of it as well. We want to see all of your comments, what you think should be happening, who you think these teams should be taking in these various positions, and make sure that you guys are tagging along with us and enjoying all the stream that we are putting out there. So we typically go live on Facebook, on Twitch, and on YouTube live. So if you're here and you're watching on any of those platforms, make sure you hit that follow button. It's Sunday. You have a great start to your week. Make sure that you guys, take it easy going into the work tomorrow, and have a good week. And we will see you back here on Wednesday. We'll get you halfway through the week, and then we'll be off and running. And at that point, it's all downhill from there. So we're here to make sure that you ease into that. But Scotty, anything else?
We're doing, you guys, it's going to be a great week. We're going to have an extra night. We're going to go back-to-back on Wednesday and Thursday, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday. We'll dive more into this draft. We'll, any other sports news throughout the country and other sports, we'll definitely dive into at the top, and then we'll dive into the draft. And then Thursday is going to be our draft special. We've put a lot into it. I think hopefully it goes really, really well, and you guys appreciate it and enjoy it. We're looking forward to it, so hope you guys can join us.
All right. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, guys, have a great week. We can't wait to see you back in here in the lab. Thank you, by the way, for everyone who was chiming in throughout the stream. We had Mayday. We had Deb pop in and jump in on some comments there. Thank you for Jesus following on the last stream, and who else was there? Manning Fresh was here as well previously. So, yeah, thank you for all the people who are following, who are watching. It means a lot, and we can't wait to see you back in the lab on Wednesday.